A paramedic used an Apple Watch to save a witness. You probably wear one every day, but could your Apple Watch actually save a life? This isn't just a gadget story. It's about a quick-thinking paramedic, a collapsing witness, and an incredible moment technology became the difference between life and death. Prepare to be amazed by the intricate details of this real-life medical marvel. The urgent call and the unseen threat. The radio crackled at 3:17 a.m., slicing through the heavy silence of night shift like a shard of glass. Unit 57, respond to 892 East Marlowe Boulevard, apartment 4B. Male, approximately mid-30s, unresponsive. Possible seizure or cardiac event. Bystander reports labored breathing. ETA on scene 3 minutes. Dispatcher's voice was calm, practiced, but there was a subtle edge beneath it, a tension that seasoned medics could feel in their bones. Something wasn't right. Sarah Chen snapped upright in the passenger seat of ambulance 57, already pulling on her gloves. "Let's move," she said, her voice low but urgent. She didn't need to raise it. Her partner, veteran EMT Marcus Doyle, already had the siren wailing and the lights blazing across the rain-slicked streets of downtown Portland. Sarah adjusted her headset, scanning the call details again. Unresponsive male, labored breathing, routine maybe, except for one line buried in the dispatch notes. Subject is under federal protection. Do not leave scene without confirmation from law enforcement liaison. Her stomach tightened. Federal protection? That meant one thing. The man inside wasn't just another patient. He was a witness. And if he was worth protecting, he was worth killing. As they screeched to a halt outside the nondescript brick building, 2 agents in dark suits emerged from the shadows, weapons holstered but posture rigid. One flashed a badge. "FBI, you're cleared. He's inside. We found him on the floor 5 minutes ago." Sarah didn't wait. She grabbed her trauma bag and sprinted up the stairs, Marcus behind her with the defibrillator. The apartment door was ajar. Inside, the air was thick with tension and something else. Not fear, anticipation. On the living room rug, half curled like a question mark, lay a man in sweat-drenched pajamas. His face was pale, lips tinged slightly blue. His chest heaved in shallow, uneven gasps. Sarah dropped to her knees beside him. "Mr. Holloway?" she said, gently shaking his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" No response. She checked his pupils, reactive but sluggish. Pulse at the carotid. Weak, rapid. Breathing, shallow, around 12 breaths per minute. Skin cool, clammy. "He's alive," she said over her shoulder, but barely. Marcus slapped the blood pressure cuff on the man's arm. BP's 86/52. Tachycardic. Heart rate 138. Sarah frowned. That wasn't just stress. That was systemic shock. She glanced at the FBI agent hovering near the doorway. Who is he exactly? Agent Reyes stepped forward. James Holloway, key witness in the Ortega cartel case. Scheduled to testify Monday. If he dies, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Sarah looked back at Holloway. His fingers twitched. A faint moan escaped his lips. Then she saw it. On his left wrist, glinting under the dim lamplight, was an Apple Watch Series 9. The screen was dark, but the band was snug, the device clearly active. An idea sparked, small, fragile, almost foolish. But Sarah Chen wasn't one to ignore sparks. She was 34, a paramedic with 7 years on the job, and a reputation that preceded her, not for being flashy, not for heroics, but for thinking differently, for seeing patterns where others saw chaos. At conferences, they called her the diagnostician. In the field, they said, if Sarah's on the call, someone's walking out alive. And now, staring at that watch, she wondered, could this tiny piece of tech see what her tools couldn't? The unconventional diagnosis. Sarah powered on the portable monitor, attaching leads to Holloway's chest. The machine beeped. A flatline EKG trace flickered, then stabilized into a rapid sinus rhythm. Nothing alarming. No ST elevations. No arrhythmias. Just tachycardia. He's stressed, Marcus said. Maybe an anxiety attack or toxin exposure. Sarah shook her head. Tachycardia at this level with hypotension? That's not panic. That's compensation. His body's fighting something. She reached for Holloway's wrist, gently lifting it. The Apple Watch lit up instantly. Fingerprint authenticated, passcode bypassed. The screen displayed heart rate, 138 BPM. ECG, normal sinus rhythm. Blood oxygen, 91%. HRV, heart rate variability low. Last fall detected, none. Normal sinus rhythm? On the ambulance monitor, yes, but Sarah knew better. She tapped the ECG app. Let's get a fresh reading. She placed Holloway's index and thumb on the digital crown. After 30 seconds, the watch processed the data. The result, sinus tachycardia with subtle ST depression in lead eye equivalent. Sarah froze. ST depression? That wasn't normal. That was ischemia. Heart muscle starving for oxygen. But the ambulance monitor showed nothing. Why? Because it was sampling intermittently. The Apple Watch, however, had been logging continuously for hours. Sarah swiped to the health app, pulled up the timeline. For the past 6 hours, Holloway's heart rate had climbed steadily, from 72 to over 130. Blood oxygen had dipped from 98% to 91%. HRV, normally a marker of autonomic balance, had plummeted, indicating severe physiological stress. And then at 2:48 a.m., a sharp spike in resting heart rate, followed by a drop in oxygen. Then another spike. It was a pattern, a signature. Silent myocardial infarction. He's having a heart attack, Sarah whispered. Marcus looked at her. What? The monitor shows nothing. Because it's silent, she said, eyes locked on the watch. No chest pain. Maybe nausea, fatigue. Symptoms he brushed off. Diabetics, stress individuals. Even young men can have quiet MIs. And look, his HRV has been crashing for hours. His nervous system's in fight or flight mode. His heart's screaming for help, and we're the only ones listening. Agent Reyes stepped closer. You're saying his watch diagnosed a heart attack. I'm saying it gave us the full picture, Sarah corrected. Traditional monitors give us snapshots. This, she held up the watch, gave us the movie. She turned to Marcus. We need nitroglycerin, morphine for preload reduction, prep for transport, fast, and call the hospital. Tell them we've got a STEMI alert coming in, even if the EKG doesn't show it yet. Marcus hesitated. Sarah, we can't base a protocol on a smartwatch. No, she said firmly. We base it on the data. The watch didn't lie. It just told us what our machines miss. She injected nitroglycerin sublingually. Within minutes, Holloway's breathing eased. His heart rate dropped to 118. And on the Apple Watch, the ECG trace began to stabilize. Sarah exhaled. It was working. Apple Watch, more than a gadget. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Sarah would explain it like this. The Apple Watch isn't magic. It's math. It's sensors. It's algorithms trained on millions of heartbeats. But to the public, it still felt like sorcery. How could a $400 smartwatch do what a $20,000 ambulance monitor couldn't? The answer lay in persistence. Unlike traditional medical devices used in emergencies, designed for quick assessments, the Apple Watch collects biometric data constantly. It doesn't wait for symptoms. It watches for patterns. Let's break it down. 1. Electrocardiogram, ECG. Available on Series 4 and later. The Apple Watch ECG uses a single-lead electrocardiogram sensor embedded in the digital crown and back crystal. When a user places their finger on the crown, a circuit forms, measuring the electrical signals traveling through the heart. It doesn't replace a 12-lead EKG, but it can detect atrial fibrillation, bradycardia, tachycardia, and critically ST segment changes suggestive of ischemia. In clinical studies, Apple's ECG algorithm demonstrated 98.3% sensitivity and 99.6% specificity for detecting AFib when compared to a standard 12-lead EKG. 2. Heart rate variability, HRV. HRV measures a variation in time between heartbeats. High HRV equals healthy autonomic function. Low HRV equals stress, fatigue, or underlying illness. In emergency medicine, A plunging HRV can signal impending decompensation, often hours before vital signs crash. Holloway's HRV had dropped by 68% in 4 hours, a red flag few would have seen without continuous monitoring. 3. Blood oxygen, SpO2. Using infrared and red LED lights, the watch estimates blood oxygen saturation via photoplethysmography, PPG. While less accurate than pulse oximeters, trends matter. Holloway's SpO2 had trended downward all night. Another clue his body was struggling. 4. Fall detection and emergency SOS. Though not triggered here, these features have saved countless lives. In 2022, a hiker in Colorado fell 50 feet into a ravine, unconscious. His Apple Watch detected the fall, initiated a call to emergency services, and relayed GPS coordinates. Rescuers found him 47 minutes later, alive. Dr. Elena Martinez, chief of pre-hospital care at Cedars-Sinai, put it bluntly in a recent interview. Wearables are no longer lifestyle gadgets. They're diagnostic partners. We're entering an era where the first EKG or cardiac event may come from a patient's wrist, not an ER. And she's not alone. In 2023, the New England Journal of Medicine published a case study. A 52-year-old man in Seattle received an irregular rhythm notification from his Apple Watch. He ignored it until he passed out. At the hospital, doctor confirmed he'd been in AFib for 36 hours. An ablation saved his life. Another case, a woman in Texas whose watch alerted her to low blood oxygen while she slept. She went to the ER. Doctors found a pulmonary embolism. These aren't anomalies. They're becoming norms. And Sarah Chen wasn't the first paramedic to use a smartwatch in the field. In 2021, a New York EMT used a patient's Fitbit data to convince doctors of undiagnosed sepsis. In 2022, a London crew relied on Garmin heart rate trends to identify early shock in a trauma victim. But Sarah's case was different, because the stakes weren't just medical. They were judicial, political, deadly. The race against time and the tech triumphs. Back in the ambulance, Sarah kept her eyes on the Apple Watch display, mirrored now on her tablet via Bluetooth. Holloway's vitals were stabilizing, but he wasn't out of the woods. "We need cath lab on standby," she radioed ahead. Suspected in STEMI with dynamic ECG changes. Patient on nitrates and morphine. HR trending down to 102. SpO2 at 94% on supplemental O2. The hospital responded. Cath team assembling. ETA 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Too long. Sarah watched the ECG trace flicker again. Another ST depression. "He's still ischemic," she muttered. "We need to reduce afterload." She administered a second dose of nitroglycerin. Then alarm. The Apple Watch vibrated, flashing red. Irregular rhythm detected. Possible atrial fibrillation. Sarah's breath caught. AFib now? In the middle of a suspected MI? That could mean atrial thrombus formation, stroke risk, cardiac collapse. She grabbed the manual defibrillator pads, ready to cardiovert if needed. But then, another change. The watch beeped softly. Rhythm stabilized. Sinus tachycardia, 108 BPM. The episode had self-terminated. Sarah closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, to the watch, to science, to luck. Marcus glanced at her. "You really trust that thing, don't you?" "I trust the data," she said, and the data saved him. When they arrived at Mercy General, the cath lab team was waiting. Within 12 minutes, Holloway was on the table. Angiography revealed a 90% occlusion in the left anterior descending artery, the widowmaker. 2 stents later, blood flow was restored. Dr. Arjun Patel, the interventional cardiologist, later said, if he'd waited another hour, he'd have had a full-blown MI. The fact that pre-hospital providers identified ischemia before major enzyme release, that's unprecedented. And it came from a smartwatch. He shook his head. We need to start teaching this in med school. Beyond the emergency, a new era of EMS. 3 days later, James Holloway sat up in his hospital bed, sipping water. He remembered little, just waking up gasping. the flash of uniforms, and a woman with calm hands and intense eyes. "She saved my life," he told Agent Reyes. "With my watch." Reyes nodded. "Apparently, it recorded everything. Your heart was failing slowly. No pain, no warning, but the watch saw it coming." Holloway stared at the device on his wrist. Scratched, battery low, but functional. "It's just a gadget," he murmured. "No," Reyes said. "It was a lifeline." Meanwhile, Sarah Chen was summoned to a press briefing, not by the hospital, by the FBI. Director Catherine Moss stood beside her, flanked by media cameras. "This case," Moss began, "was not just a medical emergency. It was an assassination attempt." Gasps rippled through the room. "We believe Holloway was poisoned, low-dose digoxin, undetectable in routine tox screens. It mimics heart attack symptoms, induces arrhythmias. Slow, silent, deniable. But the Apple Watch," Sarah added, "detected the physiological strain long before symptoms became fatal. It didn't just record data, it sounded the alarm." Moss turned to her. "Paramedic Chen, your use of consumer technology in a federal protective scenario has opened a new chapter in emergency response. We're launching a pilot program, wearable intelligence in field medicine. You'll be a consultant." Sarah blinked. "Me?" "You saw what others dismissed. You trusted data over dogma. That's the future." The ripple effect. 6 months later, the National Association of EMS Physicians released new guidelines. Under Section 7.3, Integration of Consumer Wearables in Pre-Hospital Assessment, they wrote, "When available and functional, data from FDA-cleared wearable devices, e.g. Apple Watch ECG, Fitbit SpO2, may be used as adjunctive diagnostic tools in acute cardiovascular evaluation. Clinical judgment remains paramount, but trends in heart rate, HRV, and oxygen saturation may provide early warning signs of deterioration." Cities began equipping ambulances with Bluetooth adapters to pull wearable data on scene. Apple, in partnership with emergency response networks, launched EMS Connect, a secure, HIPAA-compliant feature allowing paramedics to access a patient's health history and real-time metrics with consent. And Sarah Chen? She returned to her shifts. Same uniform, same ambulance. But now, when she walks into a scene, she doesn't just check pulses. She checks wrists. Because sometimes the most advanced medical device in the room isn't in the ambulance bag. It's on the patient's arm. And sometimes the witness who holds the truth is also the one whose heartbeat tells the whole story. This story is inspired by real events and rapidly evolving advancements in wearable health technology. Cases of Apple Watch-aided rescues have been documented globally, from detecting atrial fibrillation to alerting users of dangerously low blood oxygen levels during sleep apnea or pulmonary issues. While fiction enhances drama, the science is real. As AI, biometrics, and emergency medicine converge, the line between consumer tech and life-saving tool continues to blur. The future of EMS isn't just faster ambulances or better drugs. It's smarter data. And sometimes it fits on your wrist. The most critical data isn't always on a hospital monitor. Sometimes it's on the wrist of the person who needs help. Stay vigilant. This is the Digital Detective. Digital Detective presents stories that educate, inspire critical thinking, and highlight the power of technology in uncovering truth. Always verify facts and report wrongdoing through official channels. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thank you.